Traveling by public transportation, especially in the morning rush hour, is not an easy task. A 12-year-old boy named Bobby knew this better than anyone. He embarked on such a journey every morning in order to get to school from the neighborhood that he and his father recently moved to. As usual, Bobby sat by the window and listened to music in his headphones without looking up from his phone. During his daily trips, the boy had gotten used to the nervousness of his fellow passengers, many of whom were employees of firms and offices rushing to work. But on that day, in addition to the motley of workers and students, an inspector was also riding the bus, dressed in an official uniform with the special badge on the label of her jacket. "Attention passengers, please present your tickets," said Pamela Brown in a booming, confident voice. She had been working as an inspector for the city transport office for a long time. That day, the woman was in a bad mood. The passengers looked at her nervously and began to extract crumbled tickets from the depths of their purses and pockets. Since Bobby paid the fare, the inspector's stern tone didn't have much of an effect on him. Mrs. Brown seemed completely uninterested in the schoolboy with the backpack on his back. Instead, she walked over to a young woman dressed in simple, modest clothes. At the inspector's request to show her ticket, the young woman smiled embarrassedly and shook her head. In response, the inspector shouted indignantly so that the entire bus could hear. "What do you mean you don't have a ticket? Then you must pay the fine. When you go to the theater, I doubt you forget your tickets then. There is no credit department here, and we do not do loans. How can I pay the fine? I have no money on me. If I had money, I would have gladly paid the fare. You see, I forgot my wallet at home because I rarely take public transportation," the young woman said quietly. She was so embarrassed that she had tears in her eyes. "Yes, I know all about you swindlers. Forgot her wallet. If you have no money, stay at home, but be so kind as to pay the fine," said the inspector angrily. The young woman tried to object, but Mrs. Brown reveled in her power and was relentless. Attracted by the commotion, Bobby took off his headphones and looked at the young woman with pity. The commanding controller brought her to tears with her reproaches. Mrs. Brown was threatening the woman with police and promising that she would never let her off the bus until law enforcement arrived. The situation kept heating up until Bobby went up to the inspector and gave her money to pay for the young woman's fine. "Here, take this. This should be enough," said the boy quietly, handing the inspector a crumbled-up bill. "Child, don't get in the way. It's not your responsibility to save swindlers," the inspector said rudely. But Bobby was adamant and stood his ground. After hesitating for a couple more seconds, the inspector took the money, making a snide remark about the boy's naivety. But Bobby ignored the woman's taunts. He calmly adjusted the straps on his backpack and prepared to get off at the right stop. To the boy's surprise, the young woman followed him. "Thank you. That was so kind of you. Can you believe it? My car broke down and I left my credit card in the glove compartment. Don't worry, I'll make sure to pay you back," said the woman, touching her unexpected savior's shoulder. "Don't worry about it at all. You don't need to pay me back, really." Bobby said goodbye and hurried to the school building. The young woman, of course, thought otherwise. The schoolboy, of course, didn't know that the young woman's name was Monica Russell and that she was a successful businesswoman. Impressed by the boy's deed, Miss Russell decided to repay him in kind. To do this, Monica inquired about Bobby at his school, describing in detail his looks and approximate age. In this way, the young woman found out the name of her savior, and that more than anything else in the world, the boy liked to play basketball and dreamt of becoming a professional athlete. But on the way to his dream stood an obstacle that threatened its realization. The thing is that the gym at Bobby's school was in a deplorable state and required renovation. Outdated sports equipment should have been gone to the landfill a long time ago. However, new sports equipment was unlikely to be purchased in the foreseeable future. Upon finding this out, Monica thought for a second and then firmly decided to help Bobby's dream come true. After all, Miss Russell was a successful businesswoman with serious assets in many banks in the country. Her modest clothes and behavior could be explained by the fact that she did not like to stand out from the crowd and boast of her financial well-being. The young woman still remembered when her business was in its early stages and when she needed to save every penny in order to achieve success. The businesswoman dressed and lived in a way that she found comfortable, all the while remaining a kind and sympathetic person. Unfortunately, she enjoyed less luck in her personal life. She was tired of the endless stream of men who wanted her only because of her business. Having set the goal of fulfilling Bobby's dream of becoming an athlete, Monica coordinated all the necessary bureaucratic procedures with the school's management and allocated an impressive sum of money to renovate the gym. Miss Russell, however, was not satisfied with this gift. She also wanted to give Bobby a personal gift that he would remember, which would emphasize her goodwill towards him. To this end, Monica purchased a full set of basketball uniforms for Bobby. She also added an envelope with money, the sum of which was several times higher than the sum the boy had spent on her bus fine. Monica handed this gift to the boy when he was leaving school to go home. "What is this? This was probably very expensive. Why so much?" the boy muttered embarrassedly while looking at his uniform. Bobby did not yet know about the financial situation of Miss Russell and thought that such an expensive purchase took a significant toll on the woman's budget. But Monica ignored the objections and insisted that the boy accept the gift. When Bobby showed his father the new uniform, George Martinez was very surprised and even doubted the veracity of his boy's words. Then the boy blushed and recalled the story of how he paid a stranger's fine, having spent all of his pocket money on it. This really did sound like the truth, and once again, convinced Mr. Martinez that his son had a kind and sympathetic heart. The single father was able to fully grasp the extent of Mrs. Russell's good intentions only a few months later when he attended his boy's basketball game at the school. The game was timed to coincide with the opening of the school gym, which was recently renovated. Many of the parents at the game were pleasantly surprised by such a gift from the patron, Monica Russell. At first, Bobby didn't even recognize his acquaintance, whom he met by chance during the morning rush hour. "Thank you very much, Miss Russell. All my friends and I are very grateful that we can now play basketball as much as we want," the boy said humbly while Miss Russell greeted him. The young woman smiled kindly and responded, "I'm the one who should be grateful, Bobby. You restored my faith in kindness and sincerity. It was you who, in a difficult moment, chose to help me when everyone else chose to ignore what was happening on the bus," said Monica as she hugged the boy. At that moment, George approached them. At the sight of such a nice moment, he smiled and said, "Nice to meet you, Miss Russell. My son told me a lot about you, but we didn't know your full name." Monica looked into the eyes of the boy's father and smiled in return. She heard from Bobby's teachers that Bobby's mother died in labor and that Mr. Martinez was raising the boy alone. The conversation continued naturally. Instead of saying goodbye, the three of them headed to the nearest coffee shop. There, George and Monica talked about everything, feeling a growing sense of attraction toward each other. Mr. Martinez and Bobby returned home after dark, feeling very good after the pleasant time they spent with Monica Russell. After this first meeting, the young people felt great attraction toward each other, which pushed them to meet again. Over time, George and Monica became so close that, to Bobby's great joy, they began to consider themselves a couple. Of course, the boy couldn't have known that paying for a ticketless passenger would result in getting him a loving and caring mother. It didn't take long for George to propose. Monica, of course, said yes. And little Bobby smiled so much knowing that George and Monica, whom he loved so much, would soon get married. Many more joyful events awaited the Martinez family after the wedding, among which was the birth of their son, David, and the sporting achievements of Bobby, who chose to become a professional basketball player.